Tonight's Nocturne Expedition takes us into the high desert of northwestern New Mexico to a long corridor of land stretching across mesa and arroyo, where the sky is enormous and the silence between sounds is a sound of its own. Settle into whatever position feels most natural now, and allow the surface beneath you to hold your weight completely. There is nowhere you need to go. Nothing left to complete. Nothing waiting for you beyond this moment. The day has already passed, and now you are simply arriving. Segment 1. The desert before work begins. The cold arrives before you are fully awake, dry, immediate. Not the cold of moisture, but the cold of altitude and open sky. The particular cold of a landscape that has released every degree of warmth it collected yesterday into a cloudless night, and now holds nothing, only the memory of heat, waiting to be rebuilt. You dress in layers, not for warmth that exists, but for warmth that is coming. Because in the desert, temperature does not compromise. It simply changes completely from one extreme toward another, and the body must negotiate between them all day. Outside the trailer, the land is still in the last of the darkness. Mesas at the horizon, flat-topped, their edges sharp against a sky that is beginning, only beginning, to lighten. A deep blue at the zenith, fading toward gray at the edges. The stars still present, but fading, dissolving back into the approaching day. The wind is already moving. It is always moving here, a steady current across the surface of the land. Not violent, not dramatic, simply constant. The way breathing is constant. The way the land itself seems to breathe, slowly, without pause. You have learned already, in the days before this one, that the wind is not incidental to this place. It is the author of it. It is the wind that buried what you are here to find. Not all at once, not through any single event, but grain by grain, season by season, century by century, sand lifted from one place, carried, set down in another, accumulating over structures that once sat at or near the surface, covering them slowly, completely, the way snow covers a landscape, except that snow melts, and this did not. The smell of sage reaches you before anything else, sharp, clean, resinous, the particular smell of a plant that has evolved to survive everything this landscape offers: drought, wind, cold, intense heat. It releases its oils slowly into the morning air, more present now in the cool than it will be at midday, when the heat changes everything. Beneath it, the smell of dust, fine, mineral, ancient, the smell of decomposed stone, of volcanic tuff and sandstone ground to powder, over millennia, by exactly the wind that is moving across your face right now. Someone has started coffee. The smell of it drifts from the open door of the trailer, incongruous and completely welcome. You wrap both hands around a cup and stand at the edge of the work area, watching the mesas take shape as the light arrives. In the United States, Much of the archaeology that gets done does not happen in universities. It happens here, in corridors of land, designated for pipelines, roads, transmission lines, development of every kind, cultural resource management. CRM. Archaeology done not for the sake of pure research, but because the law requires it, because the National Historic Preservation Act and its implementing regulations mandate that before construction disturbs the ground, what lies beneath must be identified, documented, and when necessary, excavated, because once development moves forward, those resources are gone, and so the work must be done first. These projects are not designed for teaching. There are no students here, only professional archaeologists, field crew, equipment operators, specialists, each person with a defined role, each role essential. The company that won this contract won it through a bid, carefully calculated, balancing cost against scope, against time, against the practical reality of what can be accomplished in this terrain, in this season, within the terms of the contract. It is a different kind of archaeology, not driven by open-ended questions, but by obligation to record what is present before it disappears. The project extends across distance, miles of terrain, multiple sites, multiple phases of occupation, a landscape investigation where the goal is not to uncover a single monument, but to understand everything that lies quietly beneath the surface, across an entire corridor, before the machines of construction follow the machines of archaeology and close it again, forever. The light is fully here now, low and amber, raking across the surface of the land, casting long shadows from every small irregularity, every rise, every depression, making visible the subtle topography that the high sun of midday will flatten completely. This is the best light for reading the surface, and you have learned to use it, standing still, looking before the day takes the angle away. Somewhere across the site, an engine turns over, once, twice, then catches, settling into a low, steady idle, the backhoe, warming up, its sound carrying easily across the open land, filling the silence without replacing it, a mechanical heartbeat in a landscape that has its own. You finish the coffee, set the cup down, and the day begins. Segment 2, the backhoe, the structures, and the feature. The backhoe operator arrived before most of the crew. He was already there when you reached the work area, walking the ground slowly, hands in his pockets, looking at the surface the way someone looks at something they are trying to understand, not just to operate. He was that kind of operator, the kind that wanted to know what he was moving, not just how much of it. You became friends. The way you become friends on field projects, through proximity, through shared hours, through the particular trust that develops when someone else's careful work makes your careful work possible. He never needed to be told twice, and he never needed to be watched. That is a rare thing in any kind of work. The backhoe in CRM archaeology is not the instrument of destruction it might appear to be. Used correctly, it is a tool of extraordinary precision. The machine itself is large, its movements powerful, capable of removing meters of earth in a single pass. But that is not how it is used here. Not in this kind of work. What lies beneath this site is not buried deep by human intention. It is buried by wind, by the same steady current you felt this morning against your face, moving across this land for centuries, depositing sand above structures, above floors, above the accumulated material of daily life, layer upon layer, until the surface of habitation, the level at which people once moved and worked and cooked and slept, lies meters below where you are standing. And so the backhoe begins, not with delicacy, not yet, but with purpose. Large passes first, the bucket cutting into the upper levels, removing what the wind deposited, what contains nothing human, nothing significant, only accumulated time. You watch from the edge, reading the exposed soil in each pass, looking for change, a shift in color, a shift in texture, the subtle darkening that signals organic material, the presence of ash, of compressed earth, of anything that suggests that people were once here. And then, at a certain depth, the reading changes, not dramatically. There is no sudden revelation, only a sense, a professional intuition built from years of looking at soil, that the distance is closing, that what you are looking for is near. This is where the operator earns everything. You call a halt to the deep passes, and what follows is something remarkable to watch. The bucket angle changes, tilting, flattening, the hydraulics adjust, and the machine, which moments ago was moving cubic meters of sand, begins to skim 5 centimeters at a time, 10 at most, the bucket moving horizontally across the surface, as though reading it, as though the machine itself has slowed its breathing, adjusted to the scale of what is required. The operator's hands on the controls are still, almost still, small adjustments, constant, the way a surgeon's hands are still, precise, responsive to information too subtle for anyone else to see. He holds the bucket, sometimes 50 centimeters above what you believe is the highest surviving surface, moving laterally, exposing without touching, revealing without disturbing. The sand falls away from the blade, and the ground beneath begins to speak. Circular forms appear, slowly, the way shapes emerge from fog, not all at once, but in accumulation, first a suggestion, then a curve, then a boundary, then something unmistakable. Semi-subterranean structures, broad, round, their diameters ranging from several meters to nearly 10. These are pit houses, or structures related to them, dwellings dug partially into the earth, their floors below the surrounding surface, their walls rising from the excavated depression, their roofs, once constructed of timber and brush and packed earth, long returned to the ground, leaving only the impression of their form. In the archaeology of the American Southwest, semi-subterranean structures represent some of the earliest evidence of settled life, communities transitioning from mobility to place, from following resources to staying with them. The earth itself used as insulation, as architecture, as a way of making a permanent relationship with a particular piece of ground. You walk across them slowly, following shapes that are not fully visible. The walls do not stand. They do not define space clearly. They suggest it through subtle differences in soil density, through a curve that repeats, through the way the ground feels slightly different underfoot. In the places where mud brick has compressed and settled, versus the places where undisturbed desert soil simply continues. Mud brick, or adobe, is one of the oldest building materials in human history, made from the same soil beneath your feet, mixed with water, tempered with straw or grass or fiber, pressed into form, dried in exactly this sun. It returns to the earth slowly, not all at once, but over generations, softening at the edges first, losing height, losing definition, until what remains is a density, a slight resistance, a chemical memory in the soil of the wall that once stood here. You move between the structures, noting relationships, spacing, orientation, whether doorways align, whether storage areas cluster, whether the arrangement suggests a household, a family group, a community organized around shared resources. These are questions that cannot be answered quickly. They accumulate, the way evidence always accumulates, slowly, through repetition, through pattern, and then, in the center of the site, something different, not a structure, not a wall, a feature, small, contained, a slight discoloration in the soil, no more than 50 centimeters across. A faint circle, the kind that could be almost anything. A hearth, a refuse pit, a shallow disturbance with no particular significance. In archaeology, this is where everything begins. With uncertainty, with a question that only patience can answer. A tent is placed over the feature, simple, functional, protecting what lies beneath from the wind, from the sand that would fill it again by morning, from being lost a second time. You step inside, the sound of the wind softens, not gone, but muffled, present as a low pressure against the fabric, a constant reminder of the world outside, while inside, the air is still. The smell changes. Outside, sage and dust and the mineral openness of the desert. Inside the tent, something closer, more contained. The smell of disturbed soil, of earth that has not been open to air in a very long time. A deep smell, old, not unpleasant, only unfamiliar. The smell of time itself. Made briefly present, you kneel at the edge of the feature, the trowel in your hand, the field book open beside you, and the work begins. Segment 3, the vessel, the ochre, and the burial. Excavation proceeds in controlled increments, a few centimeters at a time, no more. The trowel moves carefully, not cutting, but scraping, pulling soil away from the edges of the feature, reading as it goes. The fill within the feature, the soil that has accumulated inside it, is already different from the surrounding matrix, softer, slightly darker. holding within it a different history, a different sequence of events than the undisturbed desert soil just centimeters away. This is stratigraphy at its most intimate, not the broad bands of a riverbank exposure, not the sweeping layers visible in a road cut, but something contained, specific, speaking in a very small voice. To someone willing to listen closely enough, a curve appears. Subtle at first. The trowel registers it before the eye does. A slight resistance, a change in what the tool is moving through. You pause, switch to a smaller brush, and begin again. More slowly, ceramic. The curve of a vessel wall. Emerging from the fill, its surface worn, its edges softened by time. But present, unmistakably present, a pot, or what remains of one. You follow the curve carefully, tracing the wall of the vessel, downward, working within it rather than around it, because this feature is not beside the pot, it is inside it. The vessel itself is the feature, a container used not for storage, not for cooking, but for something else, something not yet clear. In places, the ceramic is fragile, partly disintegrated, returning to the clay it once was. In places, it is no longer fully present at all. Only the impression remains, a curve held in the compacted soil itself, a ghost of the wall, preserved not in material, but in form. This is one of the quiet miracles of fired ceramic. When clay is heated to sufficient temperature, something fundamental changes within it. The mineral structure transforms, silicates fusing, water driven permanently from the matrix. The material that results, true ceramic, is no longer clay in any meaningful sense. It does not dissolve. It does not return easily to the earth that made it. It simply persists, resistant to water, resistant to the acids in soil, resistant to the slow chemistry of decomposition that claims almost everything else. A potsherd fired 1,000 years ago is essentially the same material, chemically, as the day it came out of the fire. This is why ceramic is the most durable, the most abundant, the most informative artifact type in the archaeological record. It survives when everything else is gone. And this vessel, fired in this desert, in a fire built by human hands, at a temperature carefully managed, sustained long enough to complete the transformation, held its shape through everything that followed, through the weight of sand accumulating above it, through centuries of temperature change, through the chemistry of this particular soil. It held, because it had been made to hold. The feature deepens, beyond what a hearth would require, beyond what a refuse pit would suggest. The vessel continues downward, and you follow it, centimeter by centimeter, the brush moving, the field book filling, the trowel set aside now, unnecessary, too large for what this has become, and then the ochre, at first only a trace, a warmth of color against the gray fill, yellow, deepening toward orange, lining the interior wall of the vessel, not deposited by accident, not the result of any natural process, intentional, deliberate, applied by someone for a reason. Ochre, iron oxide, has been found in association with human burials across nearly every culture, on nearly every continent, for at least 100,000 years. It is among the oldest evidence of symbolic behavior in the human record, red ochre specifically, associated with blood, with life force, with the protection of the dead, with the marking of a boundary between the living and whatever lies beyond. Yellow ochre, the color deepening here before you, carries related meanings across many traditions. Transformation, passage, the particular quality of light at a threshold. You slow even further. The brush moving in smaller arcs, the field book receiving shorter notes, more frequent, because something is building here, something you can feel before you can name. And then, a different texture, not soil, not ceramic, something else. Beneath the brush, you stop. The brush moves again, lightly, clearing just enough. A curve emerges, smooth, dense, a different kind of curve than the vessel wall, more regular, more perfect. Bone, at first only a small portion, the upper arc, cranial. You pause, not from surprise. The ochre had already suggested this, had been quietly suggesting it for several centimeters, but from recognition, from the particular stillness that comes when what you suspected becomes what is. This is a burial. The work shifts, subtly, but completely. The protocols change, the pace changes, the quality of attention changes. On Navajo land, the dead are not approached casually. There is a distance maintained, a respect that moves through the crew without needing to be spoken. Understood, honored, beyond the tent. The work of the site continues. Voices, the sound of tools, the ordinary rhythm of excavation. But here, inside, the work becomes solitary, set apart, as the burial itself was set apart when it was placed here, deliberately, carefully, with intention that has outlasted everyone who understood it. The skull emerges slowly, still partially embedded, still held in place by the surrounding fill. You do not rush to expose it fully. Instead, you define it, working outward, then downward, allowing the burial to reveal itself in sequence, the way it chose to be placed, one layer at a time. More bone appears, fragments first, then structure, the skull followed by the upper body, and something unusual becomes clear. The burial is vertical, not laid out horizontally, as is more common in mortuary practice, but descending within the vessel, the body placed in a position of flexion, knees drawn, the entire form contained within the walls of the pot, within the ochre, within the fire-hardened ceramic, within the earth. This practice, burying the dead within ceramic vessels, appears across many cultures and time periods, in the ancient Near East, in the Mediterranean, across Mesoamerica, and here, in the American Southwest. the vessel as container, as protection, as the material form of a belief that the body requires enclosure, requires a bounded space, requires a vessel the way the living require a house. The firing of this pot was not incidental. Fire transforms clay into ceramic, but it also transforms meaning. In many traditions, fire is purification, fire is passage, fire is the threshold between states of being. A vessel fired for burial may have been fired specifically for this purpose, its transformation by heat, mirroring the transformation it was made to hold, and the ochre lining the interior may have served not only symbolic purposes, but practical ones. Iron oxide is antimicrobial, its chemistry resistant to the biological processes of decomposition in a dry climate, within a sealed vessel, within a fired ceramic container, within the particular chemistry of this desert soil. The conditions for preservation were, by accident or by intention, nearly optimal. The vessel held, the ochre held, the desert held, and what was placed here remained. You work downward, centimeter by centimeter, the burial extending deeper than expected, a meter, possibly more, the feature far beyond what any shallow pit would require. The vessel walls, fragile now, some sections present only as impression, still guiding the shape of the excavation, still defining the space, still doing what they were made to do. The ochre continues along the interior, its color vivid against the surrounding earth, yellow deepening toward orange, a warmth in the soil, visible even here, in the diffuse light of the tent. You pause, record the plan view, then the profile, each element placed into the record before anything is removed, because removal is not the goal, understanding is. And because once removed, this exact arrangement, this particular relationship between vessel and ochre and bone and fill will exist only in these notes, in these drawings, in this field book. Softening slightly in the dry air of the tent, the wind moves outside, sand shifting lightly across the surface beyond the fabric. A sound like breathing, like the land adjusting its position, settling as you are settling into the work. Inside, the air remains still, focused, contained, the world reduced to this circle of soil, this curve of ceramic, this warmth of ochre, this presence of bone. The burial becomes clearer, more complete. The form of the body within the vessel, the deliberateness of the placement, the care that went into every element of this, accumulating into something you can feel without being able to fully name. This is the nature of excavation. It is both recovery and loss. You are the first person to see this, since the last person to look away from it. And in seeing it, you end the possibility of it being seen again, exactly as it is. Now, in this moment, the measurements are taken again, confirmed. The depth of the burial, the position of each element, the vessel mapped as it exists, the ochre noted, its color, its distribution, its relationship to the bone. Plan view drawn, then profile, each line placed carefully, by hand, on paper. Because this is the only record there will ever be of this exact thing, you pause, looking at the burial as a whole. What began as a faint circle in the soil, a slight discoloration, no more than 50 centimeters across, has become this, a vessel, fired, ochre-lined, placed with intention, containing a life, preserved by the very desert that buried it, revealed now only because construction was coming, only because the law required it, only because a contract was written, and a crew assembled, and a man became your friend over shared hours and quiet trust, and the careful work of a machine held 50 centimeters above what mattered. Outside, the wind continues, as it has always continued, the mesas unchanged, endless, still. The same wind that buried this, moving across the same land, indifferent to what has just been found. You sit for a moment longer, not searching, not working, only present, with the most complex and most beautiful feature you have ever excavated. The light through the tent fabric has shifted. The day has moved without you noticing, the way days move when the work holds all of your attention, when there is nothing else, only this. You gather your tools slowly, one by one, the brush, the trowel, the field book closed carefully, held against your side. The tent remains, the burial still before you, but the work of revealing is complete, and slowly, without urgency, without anything left unfinished, you begin to let the day close.